Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Crypto Hipsters Curtain Calls. This is your host, Jamil Hassan, bringing you compilations from season 6 through 8. And this is episode 20 of the Crypto Hipsters Curtain Calls episodes entitled Money for Nothing, Understanding the Future of Digital Currencies Beneath the Hype Hood. This compilation and these episodes are all compilations of mainly four clips from podcasts from season 6 through 8. This episode stars the first guest I interviewed was Johnny, who was the founder and lead developer of Empyreal SDK. That was from season 8. That was in September of 2024, September 16, 2024. We talked about onboarding the next wave of developers into Web3 and supporting them to build intelligent infrastructures. The second clip was also from season 8. My guest at that time was in April 2025. My conversation was with Vakeesan Mahalingam. We talked about why now is the best time to build infrastructure that fosters the development of institutional financial systems on the Bitcoin blockchain network. The third conversation in this compilation is from season 6. And I've had 3 conversations with this man, and this was the second one. Cyrus Taghehchian. He was with SHOPX. He's an executive advisor. We talked about increasing intelligence, understanding money, and developing a customer-centric approach to building your Web3 business. He's an advisor and executive. Johnny was the founder and lead developer of Empyreal, and Vakeesan was the founder and CEO of Torram. Fourth person I talked to and highlighting this conversation, this podcast, his name is Darren Carvalho. I spoke with him as part of season 7 in August 2024. And Darren is the co-founder and CEO of MetaWealth. And we talked about pioneering the future of digital asset management and blockchain integration. So the main core of this episode was around blockchain implementation, around real-world assets, around people being able to use the infrastructure, and money for nothing is the question. Understanding the future of digital currencies beneath the hype hood. Not just all speculation. There's work that goes on here, and how does that look, and how can we benefit from it? So all my podcast episodes are on Spotify, YouTube, and they're available. You can check out the whole entire conversation in their entirety if you'd like, or just, listen to this episode, check out the clips, and hope to see you soon and enjoy this episode. You have this war. I would say it a war, but if you're an outsider looking at social media, between and Ethereum, what's going to win? Why? And why is it easy? Why'd you pick Ethereum? And what are the considerations, and why should other people pick Solana? What's the pros and cons?
Yeah, I think I don't think there has to be just one blockchain or just one sort of paradigm for development. I think that when you look at things, even like you have like Aptos and Sui with the Move VM, and you have Solana and Ethereum, and like all these different VMs, they all have trade-offs. And so obviously when you have like the lower latency with chains like Ton is another example I look at with Ton, Solana, and I think we're starting to see some EVM based chains that are going to have that very low latency and kind of asynchronous processing like Monad. I think that there are use cases for that as well. I think it really just kind of depends on your goals for your application. One thing that I found really interesting about Tezos, I know people don't talk about it a lot, but what it was really good for me in terms of learning was they have a really high focus on like formal verification. And so when they built their virtual machine, their focus was on making it easy to mathematically verify the logic of your smart contracts. And they felt that that would be a really good value proposal to developers, which didn't catch on in the way they had hoped. But I think that a lot of really good research was done by them as a team and as a chain. And they might actually, there might be a time when that actually becomes the bigger priority. I think what we're at right now is that we want to have really flexible development that's effective. And so for me, I see the EVM community, especially in DeFi, as having a really strong open source community, a really good auditing community. There's a lot of like very good auditors in the space. And so I think that if you are trying to build a more complicated application, there's a lot of benefits to building on an EVM just because there's a lot more code to kind of use as a foundation for your development. But I think in the same way, chains like Solana, which they're building, as like a virtual machine that supports, Rust development. And so you can kind of have the tool chain of a Rust developer at your at your disposal. That also has its benefits, but I think that right now there's less of an open source community around Solana development than there is in the EVM. So it's just, I think, something where you're doing a lot more trailblazing if you're building for Solana than you are for EVMs. But like I said, I think it's the trade-offs around sort of like latency and decentralization are really sort of big things to weigh into.
Oracle. So what's going to be the role of zero knowledge and decentralized oracles in this overtaking of Ethereum by Bitcoin for DeFi?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of people in the camp that believe Bitcoin DeFi will one day become the largest DeFi ecosystem. Part of that being obviously institutional adoption, nation state adoption. Globally, governments are looking at adding Bitcoin to, as a nation state asset or treasury asset, balance sheet asset, whatever the case is. So the opportunity there is a lot bigger than the rest of crypto, I would say, which was mostly retail. So when we see ETH DeFi a couple of years ago peaked at about 105 billion. Right now, bridge TVL on ETH is around 150, 160 billion. Right, that's a drop in the bucket compared to the size of traditional financial assets. Right, if you look at the size of derivative market, that's in the trillions. Size of FX markets are in the trillions. Size of private equity markets are in the trillions. Like everything is in the trillions. The measurement of traditional financial markets are all in the trillions, right? So it's like it dwarfs anything that we've seen before in DeFi, as long as we can, make this feature possible of bringing digital assets, like the tokenization of digital assets and the tokenization of real world assets onto Bitcoin. Right. So, I mean, I think it might happen sooner than 3 years. I mean, especially with everything coming with the market structure bills and stablecoin bills and everything that's supposed to happen before the August recess. We're supposed to get a lot of clarity on the US side of things, which will then dictate kind of global policy, global regulation. So I think going into 2026, I think we'll have a lot more clarity on that side, which will allow a lot more institutions to participate, a lot more people to participate, people to feel safer about crypto assets, which kind of piles on into like a snowballing network effect, right? And I think the entry point for a lot of people is going to be Bitcoin first, right? Whether it's retail or whether it's institutional, the first asset that they're going to end up buying when they get their first exposures to crypto is going to be Bitcoin, right? And then it's up to them whether they move beyond Bitcoin as like the gateway crypto they get into and start exploring altcoins. But I think a lot of people, no matter what, there'll still be a basket or a big nest egg of Bitcoin that's being held, whether it's on the balance sheet or in retirement accounts or whatever the case is. And that's what's eventually going to lead to this mass takeover of BTC DeFi over ETH DeFi. And then I guess to touch on your points about the ZK and the Oracle stuff. So like, obviously, we don't see any of this happening without a decentralized Oracle network natively on Bitcoin, because we believe that the data to settle any sort of smart contract or the data to reference that's going to be immutable has to live on the Bitcoin blockchain itself. So that's any sort of real world data or any sort of off-chain or on-chain data depending on the use case or the application that's being built, right? Whether it's decentralized ID, you know, which is essentially like, if you think about it, decentralized ID is kind of like just an NFT, right? It's a non-fungible token that only applies, it's a one of one, it only applies to you, right? But putting something like that data on chain, especially on the Bitcoin blockchain, is something that doesn't really alter over time, right? You don't change identities day by day, right? So it's something that stays there, you know, immutable until you die, right? Which is a great use case for that. And then obviously, you know, the tokenization of assets, we're going to see a lot of as well. So like, I think oracles are a primitive piece that hasn't been explored properly yet, which is what we've actually built. Like our testnet alpha is live right now. We launched it on Monday. So, you know, people can go check it out. We brought 30 data feeds to Bitcoin, including, you know, the S&P 500 index, the VIX, all the kind of top crypto pricing, you know, some of the runes ordinal pricing, so that people can now get a feel for what's going to be possible on Bitcoin, depending on whatever data feed they need, right? And then so we have a V2 of that coming out, or a phase 2 of the testnet coming out in a few weeks as well, which will have smart contract programmability in it as well. So now people can build with a native oracle and native programmability on Bitcoin.
That's going to be dangerous. So what do you see as, you know, the appropriate time, and what do you see as the stimulus that's going to happen in case this one happens now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I do like your theory, by the way. I'm not saying, you know, my theory or any theory is wrong. I mean, it has sound fundamentals behind what you're saying. I do know from the other side of things that Grayscale and BlackRock and these other companies have massive amounts of money they want to pour into crypto legally. Now, I don't know if they're illegally accumulating things, you know, or accumulating in such a way. You know, again, it's so hard to really pinpoint exactly what's happening, what's not happening. But I do find that I do think that the ETFs will get approved this year. I do think a few will get approved earlier than June or July. One of our friends, you know, in the Web3 space, Anthony Papiolano, he's been a big proponent of having all the spot ETFs approved at the same time, which makes me feel like he knows something that a few of them are going to get approved before others. Why does he keep saying that? So I do think a few are going to get approved before others, and those are the ones that pay, you know, the money, the bread to some certain regulators to ensure that they get first dibs, because there's going to be a competition between all these spot ETF providers to get more of the people to invest. But this is going to have a couple couple consequences. And when I say consequences, they don't mean negative, right? It's just going to cause an effect type of thing. So the first thing is, if you're going to have a bunch of spot ETFs approved, what are they going to start doing to attract more customers? Marketing. So they're going to start marketing against each other. What is marketing going to do? It's going to increase the awareness and understanding of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies altogether. I see this a monstrous year for crypto. I do have ridiculous price predictions for Bitcoin, and I have never really gone out and said this, you know, publicly, but I've been saying this more so now. Couple key data points. Between BlackRock and Grayscale and a few of these other companies, they said about $30 trillion is sitting on the sidelines. Now, you have to understand they might just be saying this as posturing to make people think to go buy more Bitcoin, whatever, right? So that could always be true. Do your own research, not financial advice. Not financial advice. You get this whole game, right? No, I'm still saying it. But if $30 trillion is coming in and the current market cap of Bitcoin is 1.5 trillion, right? So we're looking at what, like a 15, 20x from where we're at right now to be able to, you know, if all the money that came in and nobody sold, that would put Bitcoin at a price prediction of like almost $1 million, 800K to $1 million, right? Now, let's say half the people sold Bitcoin to take profits or whatever. Now you're looking at a Bitcoin at 400K. No matter what you slice it, Bitcoin's going to be way over $250,000 in my opinion by the end of next year. Again, not financial advice. That's just me speculating and taking some ideas and having some fun with a good friend, an old friend on a podcast. But I do see that as a monstrous year for crypto, especially with what's happened over the years of quantitative easing, printing of money. Our debt in the U.S. is out of hand. I don't think the U.S. understands, or the citizens understand, that there's no way in hell we're going to ever be able to repay this debt. Crazy fact: the last president to balance our treasury was Bill Clinton in the mid 90s. That's over 20 years ago, right? And we haven't done it since. I don't think any president coming in is going to be able to do it. And in fact, we've gotten so far beyond the ability to repair. I think it's better just to hit the reset button. If the reset hit button is set, all this money we have in dollars or fiat, I don't know what's going to happen to it. I'm not saying it's going to go to zero, but I have no idea what's going to happen. But I do know if I have money in real estate or crypto, I do know where my money is going, and I do know how much it's going to be worth. One Bitcoin is always going to be worth one Bitcoin.
So you said something interesting there. You said, I look at the current market sentiment in crypto blockchain, and it's not too great at the moment. You said a lot of big players are controlling the market. It seems like the market is depressed, and there's more things that are going on than the prices currently reflect, right? How do we get past that, that control factor and move into the next realm of this revolution that we talk about?
Yeah. Yeah, there's like I think a couple answers to this question, right? One is that let's just like continue on with the example of real estate. So the real estate, like total global value of real estate is about $500 trillion. That's the total number. If you add it up, like every country's real estate value, that's what you're getting. Now let's add up the total market cap of crypto. It's like maybe 2 trillion, right? So if you look at the magnitude there, it's 50x or whatever, 25x, or 250x actually. So the difference is massive, right? And when you have these players that, let's say, have a balance sheet of X amount of real estate, and then they're looking at these crypto games, they're just able to blow these markets out of the water, right? Now that the institutionals are getting involved. And then secondly, just to juxtapose, the RWA tokenization market is actually very different than the crypto market, I feel, because tokenization, maybe it's too far of a stretch, but it's a little bit like Web 2.5, right? The underlying assets are very Web 2. They're very tangible. We live in them, like all the rest. Whereas Web 3 products are sometimes intangibles, right? Like you can't really understand fully what's going under the hood behind a liquidity pool, for example. And then this just kind of opens up the door to manipulations, to scams, to quote unquote FTXs. But that's kind of like why I think that crypto market and RWA market are very different things. But they offer different benefits, and they also come with different risk profiles.
Right. So which one's going to stay? Or are they both going to stay, and why?
I think that they're both going to stay 100%. Obviously, I think with the Bitcoin ETF coming out, the ETFs coming out, and then there's a lot more in the talks. I think more institutions are getting involved, especially as cryptocurrency becomes more transactable. It becomes more integrated into real world life. Like I know Solana had a really big partnership with PayPal and Stripe, and obviously there's a ton of different Ethereum apps that are coming into the real world. They're both going to stay, right? So, and I think that's when the inflection point of crypto and real world really makes sense, is when a lot of transactions, everyday payments are made on chain. And then separately, the backing of any RWA platform is obviously the tokenized aspect, right? The blockchain aspect. So when I'm using the same currency to buy my coffee that I'm using to buy my house, then it's we're back to one world. So I don't think that there's one's going to outsurpass the other. I think they're both growing at an incredible pace. Crypto has obviously had maybe probably 10 years 10 years lead time on top of tokenization. But we're both on that same journey and that same growth path, right?